Welcome to the We Are Satoshi podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Huber, and today I get the pleasure to speak with Rose Bennett. Robin is a self-coined green witch, which is an herbalist, an author, a coach, and has a ton of profound information and stories to share around herbs, plants, the kinship and relationship between humans and plants, what we as humans can learn from plants. We explore all of it. I ask her what her take is on adaptogens and the value there, mushrooms. We don't go too deep on the psychedelics and entheogen side. I think that's for the better because there's so many great podcasts out there that go deep on psilocybin or DMT or ayahuasca, whatever it might be. This one was more surface level. You know, what are some things that are literally growing around the corner, maybe in the streets of New York City, maybe here in the mountains in Washington, that can actually benefit our bodies better than some of the things that are advertised to us and prescribed on a daily basis in the Western medical system. So we talk about all that. And I think in general, my main takeaway was just looking closer at the details. You know, I go for a walk and really starting to pay attention to what are these little weeds and herbs that are growing and how did they get there and what benefits might they have. Here, especially here in Washington, it's that abundant time of year, springtime. And so, yeah, it was an encouragement to get outside and start paying attention to the details. But if you are new here, this is the last thing I'll say before I stop talking and let the show start is this podcast, We Are Satoshi. I created it because I wanted to learn from a variety of different people, ultimately with the goal of empowering myself to be more sovereign, to be more capable, to be more thoughtful, more conscious, more connected, just all those things that I want more of in my life and some of the things that I want less of. And Robin and I talk a little bit about that. But I think this episode's really fun because it's completely different than the first one. And I hope to kind of keep that variety going. If anybody knows me, I usually just want to talk about Bitcoin, but there's so much more to living a full sovereign life. So with that, I'm going to get out of here. This is Rose Bennett. Rose, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Very well. Thank you. Good to meet you, Kyle.
Yes.
And be with you.
Thank you for sharing your time. And I'm, as I told you before we started rolling, I'm just very, very excited to tap into some of your knowledge and wisdom. And maybe just to kind of orient us, could you give us a brief intro on who you are, what you're all about, and how you found such a passion for, as you self-describe yourself, a green witch or just an herbalist? Like, just paint some context.
Well, all of the above. I do have a question. If you've been kind of freezing a little here or there, I'm just wondering if we should start again and I put my thing on 5G.
So what's beautiful, we can cut this. What's beautiful about Riverside is it records locally and then it uploads in full quality. So even as long as we can hear each other, the blurriness won't be there in the final file.
Okay, so we'll cut all that. Excellent. And I will go on to answer your question.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so, I went into herbal medicine years ago, looking really for answers to my own health problems, looking at it as a physical thing, and not even understanding at that point really that herbs are plants, much less that they're beings, sovereign beings. So as I began to, there's different, phases of getting into it, but the reality of our kinship with nature was what helped me discover that I was a green witch, and that green witchery is really about, it's about a way of being more than anything, and it's a way of being in connection with and cahoots with the magic of the living world, and having an especial sense of relationship and love for the green beings, the plants, the trees, the weeds of the sea, all of that. And, a green witch can be an herbalist, but doesn't have to be. Right? A green witch could be an artist or a teacher or a mother, father, or, you name it. Like I said, it's the longer I do this, the more I think it's a way of being, and based in deep respect and gratitude for the magic of reality of our web of life.
Beautiful. Thank you for sort of just orienting us. when you talk about kinship with plants, and you describe these beautiful side effects that come from that relationship, what is your reality shaped by because you're so connected, or because you've created connection with the plant world? I heard you talking about how you'll sit under an oak tree as counsel, and I was just writing a blog yesterday about how every oak tree, every mighty oak, starts with an acorn, which is this beautiful analogy of, if you want to build something big in this world, or make something of your life, or just live a fulfilled life, it starts with just this small seed. But maybe talk about that relationship, counsel, and even some other herbs or plants that you use that have influenced your reality.
Okay. So the first thing is, you can only uncover or discover the connection that's always there. You don't create it, but you become aware of it. And the greatest side effect of that is that discovering that you could use, say, receive the benefits of oak leaves as an astringent. Maybe you're out hiking and you scrape yourself, and you can learn that you can either moisten or chew up, or in some way, like open up a leaf and put it against a scratch, and it's going to help you with bleeding and inflammation, right? An immediate first aid, wild Band-Aid. That in addition to that kind of medicine that the plants offer us and are so effective at helping us in our health, there's also this great antidote to the general loneliness that most people feel today. Right? Lack of community, lack of sense of maybe even purpose or hope. It's a totally unexpected side effect for many people. They'll come to study with me and say, wow, I was really just looking for help with my skin. I didn't know, my life was going to transform. And in terms of plants, really what you want to do is look outside your door, like the closest things around you, whether it's dandelions on the ground, or, violets or plantains or wild onion grass. Like, even start with just one, and it starts to shift everything, because you discover you have food, medicine, allies everywhere you are. And I say that as a person who got my start as an herbalist in Manhattan, right? Living in the heart of New York City. That's where I did my first weed walks, my first wild plant medicine walks, taught my classes, for 10 years.
Yes, I heard that you walked one block of New York City and found 30 different medicinal herbs.
And that's when I was a beginner.
That's hard for me to wrap my head around. Like, I think nothing lives in the concrete jungle, but the resilience of plants and nature is incredible.
And it's a beautiful mirror for us in the time that we live in, of our own adaptability and resilience. And the thing is, I work as a healer. I work primarily with wild plants, with weeds, not only because it's kind of that bioregional philosophy, use what's growing around you, use what's local to you, but also because they are the hardiest plants. You ask any gardener, right? These are the plants you can't get rid of. These are the plants you can't kill, right? And so when we take them into us, this is what it's nourishing within us, is our deepest strength, core vitality, as well as, there's just so much to it, because again, I meet people where they are. So if somebody says, well, I keep getting kidney infections, and maybe we start working with dandelion leaves and something like corn silk. These are particular plants for that. Maybe some other things, but I'm just being a little general here, right? Because everybody's different. But then worlds start to open up that nobody expected, and among them, let's just be really direct here. Starting to listen to your own body is new for a lot of people. Right? My body, well, that's in the hands of the doctor.
Right.
Right? But no, your body will tell you what you need, right? But, even that too, that comes down to slowing down and listening, which is not super popular.
I think it's becoming more popular, and I want to transition to dig a little deeper on this specific thing.
Sure.
I read a book recently, and it talks about the overly mechanistic worldview that's been really established in the last century, give or take, since the Industrial Revolution, where humans have this thought that we are elements, molecules, and it can all be broken down into almost like a direct connection between, inputs and outputs, when, to your point, there's so much more going on. Another thing I heard you say was that the herbs won't work unless you do. So you can't just treat yourself like crap and then just hope that some herb or some doctor or some external thing is going to come heal you. And
Well, let me just step in there a minute. The thing like when people say, herbs only work if you believe in them, or that's not true, right? They still have their properties. A plant like shepherd's purse that stops bleeding, it's still going to stop bleeding, whether you happen to believe that or not. But they work differently when they work with you, so that you might be trying to replace an allopathic pharmaceutical medicine, and you might get a really startling result quickly, but it's not sustainable, right? And when, in other words, if I take the right plant because my adrenals are burned out and I drink some nettles, I'm going to feel the difference. But if I keep working, 17, 18 hours a day and sleeping 3 or 4 hours a day and eating really poorly, then that plant isn't going to magically take care of me. That's what I was trying to say. So I just wanted to clarify that point, though I appreciate you, having read things and quoting back to me things that I said. And so I just want to step in because that felt really important to
I think great clarification. I am someone, so that you know this, I'm someone who really, really values critical thinking. And when you talk about listening to your body, a big part of my health journey has been listening to my body. When I was in my teenage years and early 20s, it was sports were my life, and my body functioned so well that I had the gift or the excuse to really ignore taking care of my body. And so as I've listened to my body more, I still love to look at data and science, and we nerd out over what the most recent lion's mane study on brain health or whatever. I love all that stuff, but you almost need to place as much value on your own intuition and your own consideration, and just weigh everything. And I guess I just think the overly mechanistic worldview that we have teaches us that we need to outsource our thinking, outsource our healing. And that our health is separate from us in a way, like
we are. There's a number of things you touched on, but now I'm trying to bring myself back to, there was something you said I wanted to address, but part of it is becoming sovereign, right? Owning your own authority, and that is definitely not encouraged, right? But the mechanism, it was about what you were saying about the mechanism. It's not so much like we're molecules and atoms. That would be a little better. It's more like we're cogs and wheels, right? And we're like a machine. Because if it was really going into the physics of things, then we would have, there's no separating the observer from the observed, and everything is connected to everything, right? But medicine hasn't caught up with physics, not by a long shot. So in the funniest way, medicine really hasn't caught up with science, right? Because cutting edge science is like quantum physics and beyond. Like medicine doesn't acknowledge that at all. The medical, conventional medicine, right? So, ancient medicine does, right? Indigenous traditions around the world does. Green witch traditions, which have much in common with all those we do, right? That mind, body, heart, soul, everything connects, everything influences our health. Just, you think about it in a most basic way. If you're uptight about something, you're fearful or worried about something, your breath gets short, right? There's no separating, who you are. Or I love, I'm fine, but my head hurts. Let's see, usually the last time you looked, your head was part of you. Right, or I'm fine, but I keep getting these stomach aches. Well, really, something's not fine.
Yep. Yeah, that's really well said. I was reflecting and thinking about the concept of health and with our mission at Earthy, our whole mission is empowering people to take ownership of their health, which is very similar to empowering people to regain sovereignty over themselves.
Absolutely.
And the way that we approach that, it's a very big challenge, but transparency and actually sharing with our customers exactly all the ingredients we use, how much of them, and then tracing them down to the farm level, just being as transparent as we can, so that it's almost a wake-up call of like, hey, look, this is the standard of transparency, that you should be paying attention to every single thing in your body and where it comes from and how it's processed. And so just empowering people to start to read the back of labels. Personally, about a year ago, I stopped eating processed food almost altogether. And I would be curious to ask you about diet and, what is your diet? Do you eat meat? Are you plant-based? What's that journey been like?
Oh, well, those are two different questions, the journey and what is, right? But, and I do want to respond to say, I love, the transparency piece. It speaks to authenticity. It speaks to integrity. It speaks to the things that we really can be, And this is how we're going to change the way business is done in the world. It's not going to happen from the top down, goddess knows. It's going to happen from people at the grassroots like us who care about these things. And it's a much healthier, happier way kind of to be with one another as well. So diet-wise, I firmly know that there is not one right diet for everyone. So that's one place where I say, we are the craziest beings in that we choose our food with our minds, right? By what we've read, what other people have told us, and what, and of course, and probably all of you listening know, right? You can read a different thing about what's the must have, the must avoid every day, multiple times a day. So no wonder we're confused. Here we go back to checking in with what does your body need. So I have been a vegetarian. I have been you name it, right? Mm-hmm. However, so in this moment, I am a person who believes in eating real food of every variety and as much variety as possible. I do eat, far more plant-based foods than animal foods, but I definitely ingest animal, to me, it's like the plants are beings too. So I have the deepest gratitude, whether I'm ingesting a chicken or I'm ingesting, a collard leaf, or you know what I mean? It's about, again, that relationship. It's about gratitude, appreciation for what you're receiving. Most people I work with, like I also see clients, most people I work with they're very confused about food. That's one thing for sure, but are mineral deficient, right? And so rather than, popping a whole bunch of different supplemental things and expensive, fragmented, right? Because here it goes back to the mechanistic fragmented. We work with how do you get those minerals that will nourish your nervous system, your cardiovascular system, your bones and joints and ligaments. How do you get that from your diet? And I'm not saying, there's never a time to take supplements. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying where my leanings are, right? And so I'm gonna suggest to people that they want to up their dark leafy greens in their diet, and I'm going to suggest that they cook them like a long time, right? So when somebody else who's into raw foods is going like, no, you're losing everything. My understanding is that minerals are stones. They're like stone-like structures, and to get them to a point where we can assimilate their benefits, they have to be opened up, and it takes time. So I think back to, how did the grannies, how were they cooking them? They were cooking them for hours and hours and hours. So that is my philosophy with that. I'm not saying everyone has to agree with it, but I have found it improve many, many, many people's health and digestion to stop eating so much raw food. I also think in terms of choosing diet and herbs, you want to do a combination of looking at where are you, what kind of climate are you in, and where is your ancestry, right? Like if my ancestry is from Trinidad and Tobago, I'm going to be evolutionarily like kind of geared to some different things than if my ancestry is, is Russian and Polish, right? But you always want to bring that into then, and where are you now? What climate do you live in? And then it's like, again, for me, it's about the food being whole, real, local as possible, and not being intensely rigid about it either. Because I don't think that does our health any good. And a lot of people are so confused that they're approaching eating with so much fear.
Mm-hmm.
That like makes me sad. Like
it makes me, yeah, it hurts my soul a little bit. The same thing happens with fitness. We have this relationship with fitness and exercise. These words have become like, it's a chore. You go to the gym, you get your fitness in when walking is fitness. Right after this podcast, I'll do 10 push-ups. That's fitness. It takes me 10 seconds. And
awesome.
it gets my blood flowing. It puts my brain in a better place.
Mm-hmm. I might like dance to some funky music. That'll be my version of your push-ups. Yeah, I love to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like to think in terms of movement more than exercise personally.
100%. Yeah.
Like find pleasure in taking care of yourself, then you're likely to do it.
Yes. It should be fun. Getting healthier.
Yes. As much as possible. And listen, if you're in really, really bad shape, you're quite ill, you're hurting, of course it's not all going to be fun. Of course it's not. But it's, it's what approach you're taking, and are you doing whatever you do, if you can do it with self-care. This is challenging for people, but if you learn, or you even start with an intention to approach your whatever you're doing for yourself out of caring rather than discipline, it goes a long way. It's a very kind, like I do my best to help people learn how to be kinder to themselves, because I know that learning how to be kinder to myself has changed basically how I experience living. I was big for pushing myself very hard, and it's not what I do anymore. And then at the same time, I will say, anything that I'm teaching is also what I'm practicing. It's not like there's some there you get to and you've got it all together. No, absolutely not.
Right.
It's certainly not for me. Right. But this is what I practice, is how do I practice kindness to myself? Not, I should have, Boy,
we're hard on ourselves. I found myself, I'll speak to myself negatively about positive things that I'm doing for myself. So for example, I'll say, oh man, I don't want to get in the cold ice bath, and I know it's good for me. I know this is afterwards, I'm going to be more alert, more focused, and just in a better mind state. But I will talk to myself like, oh, this is going to suck. And I actually correlate the negative emotions with the positive experience. And I found that out recently. I was like, I need to stop doing that right away.
Well, but then there's a part of you that's just the reality of what you're experiencing in the moment. And so, you can kind of let that be, and it'll fall away naturally. And then that ice bath thing, it's like a perfect example of the different, the different approaches, and those who think that's the best thing since sliced sourdough bread. And those who, like in Chinese medicine, they say, oh no, that's for when you're dead.
Mm-hmm. It's a tool. Yeah.
Right? And is anything the right way? No, it's what's right. It's what's right for you.
So I want to ask you a little bit about navigating. So let me just take a second here, because health is such a touchy subject. Everyone's at a different place in their health journey. And this isn't like, there's no judgment here. It's, like for me, I have some hip dysplasia. It's genetic. It's something I deal with. It's, I love moving my body and being outdoors, but I had a doctor when I was 23 years old tell me I was going to need hip replacements in my 30s. So that's the burden I carry. It's not, it doesn't, I still have a joyful life. I'm trying to make the most of my life, but it's something I'm aware of. And we all have these things that we carry. My partner developed an autoimmune disorder 2 years ago out of the blue. And I know a lot of people, you mentioned gut health, but something about the food system is broken, is my theory. There's all these toxins in our environment, but what we put into our body, in my opinion, likely has a big impact. And even just lotions we put on our skin and things like that. But how do you talk to people or guide people who have these confusing health situations? They go to a doctor, she's seen a bunch of specialists, and they'll tell her, here's a prescription medication that has all these side effects that will harm you, but also could help you. And I guess, are there any things around gut health that you would just kind of say, like, this is something that's across the board worth looking at or experimenting with? Sure. Even though we're all unique.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but I also want to speak to what you were just saying about doctors give pronouncements that are not necessarily true. And then you're carrying that in your pocket all the time, and that is not helpful. I can't tell you how many times I've helped someone who said, well, your only option is surgery. And then we work together with herbs and self-exploration, and they've never had to have the surgery. So, that's where things like ritual can come in to release messages that you've been given that you have taken in as the truth that may absolutely not be the truth.
Right.
But maybe that's another topic, but that's what I would recommend if you were working one-on-one with me with that particular statement. I would do a simple ritual of maybe writing it down, tearing it up, and flushing it down the toilet.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I have to say as an herbalist is many times herbalists have a way to work with these conditions that are much more, healing, and especially with things like you're talking about than the pharmaceutical that has all the side effects. Pharmaceuticals, surgery, these should be the last things, right? Not the first things. So as to gut health, it's a big topic because it depends. Is it because someone's liver is overloaded because they're taking so many vitamins or so many pharmaceuticals that their liver is working extra hard? Is it that they've got leaky gut and the tissue of their intestines is too permeable? So it does depend. And having said all that, here's some herbs that are utterly benign that I could recommend to anyone. One would be one of my favorite herbs. In fact, the herb I have often said, if I could only have one herb in the whole world, it would be this one, is plantain. Not the banana plantain. That's a different. Platano is different. This is plantago, either whatever species lives near you, magus, lanceolata, blah, blah, blah. There's gazillions of them. But plantain is it's like a lawn weed, right? It's something that shows up everywhere, city, country, suburbs. I mean, in suburbs, you kind of have to, everywhere you kind of have to make sure no pesticides are being sprayed on them. But plantain is a miracle plant for the gut, can really help heal endothelial tissue, heal the linings of the gut, can help with peristalsis, with constipation, can help with in so many different ways. So that's a great one. Eating it, drinking it as tea, drying it, and putting the powder in your food. One of the things about herbs that I learned into the journey was that the form you take things in can make a really big difference of whether they work or they don't work, or how well they work, or whether you will even take them, right? The first herb I ever tried to take was impossible, vile tasting. And I was like, okay, well, me and herbs, we're done. Clearly that wasn't correct. But, I thought so at the time because I was given a powdery version of white oak bark, and it was awful. However, now I love white oak bark. Just the cut piece is made into a tea. It's like a completely another world, right? Than what I was given way back the very first time I went to an herbalist, before I even really knew what an herbalist was. So plantain would be one that I can absolutely suggest. It does so many great things in the body and does no harm, and is common and abundant and available, because we need to think, as herbalism has become a big business, compared to when I started, big time different thing, is now we don't want our love of plant medicine to then contribute to hurting the earth, right? Taking without giving. So I like to personally, Kyle, I mean, that's partly why I teach people to recognize the plants that grow around them, learn to gather their own medicine, or just support your local herbalist. Like, you don't have to go to the biggest companies, right, to buy your teas. You go, well, probably where you live, I'm guessing there's a good amount.
I'm in Washington, so there are plenty.
Washington State?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know why, I thought you were Colorado.
Yeah, we're up here in the mycelium, capital of the world up here.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. So, yeah, and another herb that I have often suggested to people, and this is one that you would only buy organically grown as opposed to wild, because the elm trees have been, well, let me just say that. Just buy organic if you're buying slippery elm. So slippery elm is a great herb for the digestive system. It's probably better known as a herb for sore, inflamed throats, because they have those like kind of Thayer's, I think it is, like slippery elm lozenges in a lot of the health food stores. But the actual powder stirred into yogurt or applesauce, or I put it in eggs, it just in anything, is really, really helpful. And like many herbs, work a range, like a spectrum on the system of anything from helping constipation, helping with diarrhea, right? So we don't use herbs. I really so encourage people to not, let me say it differently. We're creating a new paradigm for medicine. It's not that we're saying, okay, where I took an aspirin, now I'm going to take willow bark. It's a different shift of healing through nourishment, healing through strengthening the organs that detoxify your body, right? Rather than, as is often said, take this to detox. No, no. Why would you want to bypass what your body's designed to do? That's why you have a liver. That's why you have skin. That's why you have kidneys. That's why you have lungs. They're designed to do that. You want to nourish what's not working for you, right, as well as it could, rather than taking over for it, because that just ends up weakening you, right? So
that makes so much sense.
Yeah, the body is, one of the tenets of the tradition that I work in, which I like these days, I call the wise, wild woman tradition, which is for everyone of all genders, is that the body is oriented to heal, just as the earth is oriented to heal. As soon as we stop harming the earth begins healing. As soon as if I stop smoking tobacco, my lungs begin healing immediately, right? When I was a young herbalist, I still smoked cigarettes, and people would be like, that's nuts. How can you be an herbalist and smoke cigarettes? And like, transparency. Would you rather I hid around the corner? And believe it or not, some students said, yes, I would. I'd be more comfortable if you did. I said, yeah, but I'm not going to do that. I'm where I'm at is where I'm at. And as I keep being, more loving to myself, doing good things, opening to stuff I love, the things that aren't so good for me, they're going to fall away. And that's what happens for people. I find that kind of approach of what can I add in? How can I be more joyful? What brings me? Those things are more transformative of our quote unquote vices and bad habits and so on and so forth than all of the beating up and all of the efforting that we ever do. They make it easier.
Very well said. You mentioned pesticides, such a big conversation in and around plants.
Yeah.
What has been...
Stop them. Just stop. Like, we need to speak up everywhere we see it and say, stop poisoning our land, our water, our plants. Gone through huge, movements here where I live around that. We were able to get them to stop one year, not another year. It's just, we've got to use our voices.
I believe with you that the change will come bottom up, and it's happening. People are paying attention. They're they're, purchasing food that is organic and has, they can trust that there's not pesticides sprayed on it. And yeah, the stories of just, especially thinking back in history of DDT and some of these super cancer causing agents.
Which
Is there?
Yeah.
I guess I'll pivot to asking you a different question, which is about adaptogens, and it's kind of about language, but there's terms that get thrown around like adaptogens or superfood,
Yep.
which are very broad
They are.
and can be helpful. What's your perspective on the term adaptogen? And then I'll ask you another question specifically about mushrooms.
Okay. Well, my perspective on adaptogens is that, it's a label, and labels can be useful. There is a school of thought that it refers to an absolutely specific, a neural and chemical pathway that the plant affects, and the HPA axis, this, that. This is not how I think and perceive. So, I can read it, I can understand it, but that's why I can't even quote it back to you exactly, because it's just not how I think. I think more like I approach plants and healing more as the storyteller that I am. Like, I'm looking for the story of what it's doing. So what I've seen is that the adaptogenic plants are often, not always, but often sort of some kind of combination of what has historically in Western medicine been called alteratives and nervines. So the alteratives are those plants that we would use for something like what you were describing with your partner, right? Where there's some chronic condition that is mysterious and, and harming, and, alternatives aren't only for autoimmune, but alternatives are in the most general definition, a plant that alters a chronic condition when taken over time. Okay. And then the nervines are plants that are going to nourish, strengthen, and soothe, usually. Sometimes you're lifting, but usually you're soothing the nervous system. So put these two things together, and that's sort of how I think about adaptogens. Oftentimes they can also be a plant that will help the body in that process of metabolizing and excreting what it can't metabolize. Like, let me give you a specific example, and you who are listening, so it's not just words. A plant like red clover, marvelous, common, beautiful flowering lawn weed that many people kind of recognize after they're shown, oh yeah, I played with that when I was a kid, or I popped that in my mouth and my mother told me not to. Definitely do that. You want to eat that. But that is a classic alternative that does a variety of things in the body that end up helping arthritic conditions, balances acid alkaline, helps the lungs. It is a very specific anti-cancer plant that studies have shown will surround like cancer cells and keep them from metastasizing. Having said that, nothing works for everyone all the time, right? It's healing is complex. But red clover, the acid alkaline thing, it helps the digestion. So many kind of conditions. So this plant is used as a nourishing plant that will alter chronic conditions over time in the musculoskeletal system, in the digestive, in the lymph, in the skin. It's probably the thing it's actually best known for, and was the last thing I said. And there was something you said right at the beginning, Kyle, or near the beginning, that I said, I'm trying to remember. I just remember what it is. I'm going to bring it in here. In terms of what I see work the best when people are ill, is that the more complicated the condition, the simpler I go with the plant medicines. And that is because that is what I have at this point in my journey of working with so many people seen work the best. It engages us in our own process of healing when we're not just overwhelmed with a bunch of stuff to take. And I'm very into the mystic and the magic and the multidimensional, and I'm super practical. I am interested in what works, and that's what I see works. Right. And also you have to be able to do it. If it's too much stuff and you're not going to do it, then it does you no good at all.
Absolutely. Same with diet. If you can't make it sustainable, then it's not the best diet for you.
Yeah. And
I think it's a good
rigidity is not your friend.
It's a good time to ask you about entheogens or psychedelics.
Sure.
And how those can play a role in healing, when to seek them out. A lot of people, because people know we have mushrooms in our product and, we talk about mushrooms all the time. People will reach out to me saying, hey, I'm dealing with stress or anxiety, and I have this sense that a psychedelic experience could be helpful in unwinding. And I know personally, I've had profound experiences, not just with mushrooms, but with LSD and DMT. I've never used ayahuasca or peyote, but those are a couple others that are on my list as far as psychoactive plants, yep. Right?
The current celebrities.
The current celebrities, yes. Now we're talking trendy stuff, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And I think it can be a pitfall to say, oh, I'm going to go have this experience and I'm just going to leave my anxiety behind. We hear stories that are like just remarkable, healing, especially when it comes to PTSD, trauma, stuff like that. When and where do you think, or I know you don't probably want to tell people, this advise specific things like that.
I can answer you. I mean, the other thing that I want to say about this is that I have seen those kind of remarkable results come from dandelion, come from plantain, come from goldenrod, come from mullein, come from
cacao, maybe.
Cacao, right. I'm just saying every plant is consciousness altering. Every plant is consciousness altering. They know who they are. And when we work with them, they help us know who we are.
Wow.
So it's a wow. Now, having said that, I mean, it really is a wow. It's like, it ceaselessly amazes me. And one of my favorite things, I've said this on podcasts before, but I had a shaman in the apprenticeship circle who was very distressed when she got dandelion as her plant ally to work with for the year, like her plant teacher to work with, to be the ambassador for her to all the other plants. And she was like, dandelion, I mean, she was into, climbing mountains in the Andes and the, all of it and taking many entheogens, etc. And I always remember how she opened her final project at the end of the year. She looked at everybody and she looked at us each in the eye one at a time. And she said, dandelion kicked my butt. So I loved that. And having said that, I have had students who I have advised to use them, whether in full journey or microdosing. I've had students I've advised not to use them, that I thought it was the wrong, kind of direction for them. Whatever someone's doing, the thing to realize is it's like a ritual. It opens the door. It doesn't do more than that. It doesn't bring the healing. The work starts when the door has opened, right? And so I actually, Kyle, this is kind of fun. Many of my students have come to me because of their ayahuasca journeys. They're like, oh my God, I learned that plants really are alive. They really communicate. And so I'm seeking you out to study because I know you teach herbal medicine with that as a piece of, of your approach, or an essential piece. Right. So, yeah. So, but the thing is, people get wrapped up in thinking they have to keep doing it, which is not so easy on the body, and or take it out of cultural context, which is, I write about iboga and ibogaine, the drug that was made from it, in my first book, Healing Magic. Here, I'll show you. I mean, I won't show you the whole section. I'll just show you the book. I'll hold up the book for you and anyone looking. So here's Healing Magic, a Greenwich Guidebook to Conscious Living. And I have a long discussion about that, about iboga and ibogaine. I find it very intriguing. I haven't used it internally. I would if I was maybe in Ghana someday. And we can work with plants by ingesting them, but we can also work with plants dreaming with them. So I don't know if I answered your question. There's a lot to say about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
either for or against, but I am cautious because of the trendiness and because people think that that's it, when really it initiates a possibility by, well, you know this from your own experiences, right? It gives you insights. If you don't actually ground those insights and integrate them into your way of being, yeah, it's not, it was a good experience, but it's not worth that much in the long run. And maybe that's why people kind of want to do it again and again and again, because that seems a lot easier than doing the work of integrating the teachings in that way that will change how you live your life day to day to day. And, we're at an amazing point in evolution as a species, right? We're definitely in a do or die moment. We absolutely are. And since you brought in the analogy of the acorn and the oak at the beginning, one of the other things that I say here in Healing Magic, because I just love it so much, is that a teacher named Jean Houston, you may or may not know of, who was really a pivotal pioneer in the whole human growth, human potential movement. She still is at work. She talked about entelechy, Entelelechy, entelechy, and says that it is the entelechy of an acorn to grow into an oak tree. Meaning it's like we each have some entelechy, an inner blueprint of our evolution. And so when we begin to wake up and we begin to tune in with the help of our plant medicines and our plant teachers and elders, it's waking up something that's already there, right? It's not like saying, your destiny is to, whatever, right? Start a company or teach, but it's, the expression of self. You'll find a way. There is an essential self to awaken, and then find what's your means of expression, and everyone has it. And when you have it, it gives you a sense of purpose, right? And a sense of yourself, and then that brings more peace, and that peace inside translates to more peace outside. And this is how we're going to evolve, right? It is political and social activism, but it's also spiritual awakening, consciousness, evolution. Without it all, it's not going to happen. With it all, it is already happening.
So beautifully said, Robin, Rose. Thank you so much. Man, really, really resonates with me. And I think there's two directions that I kind of want to poke on here. And I know we're running out of time a little bit, but one is, you mentioned waking up, which for me, I had this experience at age 16 when I realized that a lot of what I was being told in school and in church had unanswered questions that I wanted answers to. So I would ask, for example, this is just an example, but in the Christian faith, if you don't believe and love in Jesus, you don't go to heaven. And so as a 15-year-old, I said, well, what about a tribe in Africa that's never heard of Christianity? How do you justify, are they not, ready for a good afterlife? And there wasn't a great answer for that question specifically, but what woke you up?
Missionaries, yeah.
Yeah.
I change them. So yeah, I hear you. What woke me up?
Yeah.
Great question. One of the things, I'll keep it brief. One of the things that woke me up was reading books by a woman named Jane Roberts. She and her husband, was channeling this being called Seth, who was not in material form, and her husband, an artist, Rob, was writing everything down. These books have sold since that time. I was maybe 17, 18, and I remember opening the first book, which was called Seth Speaks, and kind of reading a page or two and putting it down, and reading a page or two and getting incredibly excited and putting it down, because I was like pacing, and I was thinking, wow, other people think about these things. I didn't know anybody ever thought about these like secret thoughts in my head that somehow, I don't know, there was more than just what was obvious on the earth. There was more to life than met the eye, that there was, some kind of multi-dimensional reality to us. And, so that was a big, like, wow, yes, for me. Right. So that was before
Super.
plants. That was long before plants. And really, I was involved in spiritual work for a good 10 years before I grounded it with the earth and got into the herbal medicine and kind of brought it all together.
One other thing that you mentioned is setting an intention during the new moon, which I'd never heard of, I'd never thought about, and I'm now going to try it. I think it's just this beautiful 2-week period where it's like compartmentalized. Hey, this is the thing I'm focused on. So maybe talk about just what's your most recent intention, and maybe some that you have struggled to integrate, some that you have been successful and that have improved your life.
Oh, wow. Okay. You think that's a short question. Okay.
Take your time.
Talk about that for a couple of hours. Well, let's see. One of the hardest intentions I ever set was to not interrupt anyone that month. To let everybody finish all their sentences. I mean, it sounds so like maybe mundane, right? But it was about listening. Right? It was a very specific way to work on my listening. And, kind of finishing someone's sentence can be a way of connecting, right? Like, yeah, I hear you. We're going to say this together. It's beautiful. But that's just kind of, I always think that's kind of a funny one.
I do that too. It's really hard on video calls, even 10 times harder.
Yeah. But, I've been doing this work with the moon for over 30 years now. And it's really life altering because it's like a way to become your own spiritual teacher, a way to kind of go inside and find, what do I want to practice this month? What do I want to intend? And then it's like, again, like with the entheogen, the intention is the, starts it. And then how do you practice it? And you bring whatever that intention is to fullness by that full moon, like you said, in a 2-week period, like however it is. Maybe you realize that you didn't practice it at all. Maybe you realize it was way easier or way harder than you thought. Or 4 days into it, you have to go back into your journal because you can't remember what your intention was. So there's all these possible permutations. But the second half of the cycle is very much like the integration after that mind-altering experience. The second half is very important. Full moon to new moon is when you integrate the effects of having practiced it. Right? And who am I, having learned to speak up for myself when I feel put down? Right? That might be an intention. I'm going to speak up for myself when maybe there's one person at my job who's always, kind of subtly digging at me, and I just let it slide. Right? It could be anything like that. It could be, I'm going to take an herbal bath, every, twice a week, this moon as part of my self-care. One of mine, this moon, mine is a little more general than I usually make it, but you asked, so I'll tell you. Sometimes I actually do have to go into my journal and see exactly what did I say. But this one, it's kind of simple. It's to share my gifts. So, that was part of when I said to you, I realized I had double booked today. So part of was like, what will help me keep my commitment to my intention? Oh, well, I'll change the other thing and keep this conversation I'm going to have with Kyle of Earthy and his podcast, because it gives me a chance to share, gifts that have opened good things for me. Right, so
I really like that.
Yes, yeah.
And you see an opportunity where you can apply it and where it comes up. That's the integration, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the practice. And then by practicing,
yeah.
It integrates into you. And it's really about, as so much of healing is, it's about writing more expansive stories.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, okay. There's another week-long discussion we can, what I mean is our self-limiting stories are rampant, or even let's put it in the big picture of the world. How many people do you know who are like, it's too late? We've messed things up beyond repair. There's what's the point?
Right.
What's the point? Let me have another drink. Let me have another puff. All right. So a more expansive story would be, how do I know what's possible? I think it's the ultimate of combination of ignorance and arrogance when we think we know what's possible. Everything's possible. Anything's possible. And we are co-creating. So here's my more expansive story. My limiting story might have been, I have no control over what happens to me. That would be a classic limiting story. I have no control over that. My parents did this. I'm this astrology sign. I don't have enough money, whatever. I have no control, right? And a more expansive story might be, I'm co-creating my life with every thought, with every choice. Things open up, right? And so it's to find our limiting stories about our health, find our limiting stories about what we think is possible for ourselves, for someone we love, for the world at large, and that's not positive thinking, right? Positive thinking like Pollyanna, no, this is not what I'm talking about at all, right? It's because we still need discernment. Discernment is very important, right? Like we need to discern that, say, for example, let's just do one that's nobody could argue with, I don't think, is, do we have transparency in politics today? No, none, virtually none. Right. But then, I can use that as an excuse. Well, why should I tell the truth? No one around me is. But that's not going to determine for me how I want to be. And that brings us back to the sovereignty. Who are you? What's your reality? What's your truth? How do you want to be in the world? Don't base it on what someone else is being. How are you? And then coming back to plants, because they each know who they are so beautifully and so well, when we take them into us, they help us know who we are. And that is a gift I had no idea that they had to offer. But now I've seen it in so many people. And it's just beautiful. And I'm very grateful for it as well.
I've definitely improved my gratitude for just even plants in the backyard, just being more connected to nature through some of the psychedelic experiences that I've had.
Yep.
But I think the next chapter of my life, I'm not really called in that direction. I feel more called to understanding all. I mean, this is a world that, like, because I'm on the internet, and these are the types of herbs that are often talked about are the ones that launch you into the stratosphere or whatever.
Yep.
They take more of my consciousness, and I'm now realizing in this conversation, which I was not expecting, is just almost how ignorant I've been of all the things around me that I should be connecting with, or maybe not should be, but could be connecting with. So I appreciate you really, really. Like I can feel your passion coming through in this conversation and others I've heard, and super quick.
All these gifts we have that we, I didn't know about them either. You know what I mean? This is not like I didn't grow up with this, but we learn it's all right here.
One thing, it's a little bit off topic, but it's about cannabis. So I've had a long relationship with cannabis. It's changed over the years. Since I was about 16 years old is when the first time I came across cannabis in a park with my friends. It's something that's ritualistic. I've used it to cope positively, and I've also used it to cover up emotions and feelings. And I find myself, if things get stressful, turning to cannabis. So with cannabis being legalized and commercialized and corporatized
everywhere,
I've actually started to realize that it could be having a negative impact on my life and potentially preventing me from sharing my gifts as a human. For example, I would not want to use cannabis before a podcast conversation or before working, because it's going to make me not the best version of myself for that specific thing. But if I want to go on a bike ride, I might use it or something like that. How do you think about cannabis? Is the fact that it's been so synthesized and genetically altered, is that part of the problem? Or because the plant itself, I would never make the claim that it has some sort of negative entity or property to it. It is what it is. It's a plant nature provides. But for some reason, my relationship with it has been just difficult to discern when it's impacting me positively and negatively. How do you think about all that? Is that a lot?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I've had similar experiences and realizations as you have as well. I think we can safely assume I've had a longer relationship with cannabis than you have. And, the whole like commercialization, corporatization, that is its own topic. I always remember one medicine man from Africa, whose name I do not know, said, plants hate going into the laboratory. And I've always taken that to heart. I think there's wisdom in that. Plants, animals, who wants to be dissected and all of that. But having said that, and the whole commercialization is, it's kind of like, it's so intense. It's just so intense. But, I think you're discerning well and wisely about, where it's good for you, where it isn't. That seems to be a smart use of the plant, a smart approach. One of the things that I think is maybe could be helpful is cannabis is kind of a trickster plant. And that's where some of that, some of the confusion can come in. That's one thing I heard that helped me understand this beautiful plant a little better. It's a trickster. Another was something that one of my first herbal teachers, Susan Weed, said, which is very interesting to explore, which is she says that it, or said at the time, I don't know if she still does, that it opened the back of our energetic centers, right? The chakras. And that's an interesting thing to think about if you haven't been doing your work to kind of open your energy body. If it opens the back, that made perfect sense to me, where people's experiences, including my own, of paranoia would come from. Right? If all that was open and I hadn't come to it authentically, naturally, right? Which is, one of the challenges, right, with entheogens as well. But again, everything is here for us. Everything is here for us. But I think that really what you said kind of captures the best approach to all of those plants, the entheogens, the cannabis, so forth, is discerning for yourself. Where is this good for me? Where is it not good for me? Where is it holding me back? I don't know. I knew that for me, it was holding me back in some ways for a long time before I actually let it go. And then it just kind of fell away from me. Not like I would never do it, but just as a regular thing, it fell away. And of course, I think that's very ironic now that it's finally legal that I'm not, not into it in that way. I also get concerned about, because of the foggy part of it, I get concerned about it creating more complacency among us at a time when being complacent is kind of the last thing we need. We need to be paying attention to what, the abuses of power that are going on pretty much everywhere. So, yeah, I'm not, what's that word? I'm not like I can't think of what the word is, somebody who doesn't believe in intoxicants. I think intoxicants are part of the joy of life. I'm a big fan of really good ale, and I always find it fascinating that I grow hops too, but that cannabis and hops are the two plants in that family. They're the only two plants in that family, the Cannabaceae family. That's very interesting. So again, I'm not anti-intoxicant. I think we need intoxicants, but wise use is what you said is, to me, moving in that direction of discerning what's wise use for you.
Well, I wish I could say with honesty that I actually apply that 100% of the time.
You mean you're human?
Yeah.
You don't apply it 100%, but as a way of thinking about it. I'm just saying it's a good way of thinking about it. And I know for many of us, it becomes something that there's a little push-pull thing, and I think that is the trickster energy. of maybe making you more introverted or
Right.
whatever.
It does that for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I'll just throw in here, you mentioned complacency.
Yeah.
The conspiracy theorist in me, Robin, is like, oh, it's only being legalized because they want us complacent. They want us just docile so that we don't ask the questions and we just kind of stay at home, watch TV and, get our infotainment and that's it.
There's probably a little bit of truth in everything, because then there's the other side of that where the pharmaceutical industry hates it because it's taking revenues away from all of the anti-anxiety medications. Yeah, and it doesn't really ultimately matter even why they are doing it.
Sure.
What matters is what we do with it, what we do with anything, right? So I just taught a class the other week that I called Liberate Yourself with Herbal Medicine, right? How are we liberating ourselves? Regardless of what is, coming at us from the outside, how are we liberating ourselves from within? Plants can help us with that. And like I said, it doesn't have to be an entheogen. You can liberate yourself with the help of any plant. And one other thing, and I think I need to get going.
Okay. I'm sorry for taking so much of your time.
That's okay. I want to also
Having too much fun.
Yeah, it is fun. I actually just want to show you my medicine book, which is The Gift of Healing Herbs, Plant Medicines, and Home Remedies for a Vibrantly Healthy Life. It's a bit of a tome, but it is filled with easy, user-friendly recipes, and it's divided by body systems, but it's also got rituals and spirit, and because that's just where I live. So I did want to show people my book.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to link all three of your books, and you have a couple meditations as well. We'll just I want people to be able to dive deeper into your work, and I know I'm certainly going to.
Thank you. So then I'll just cut right to the one other thing I wanted to say.
Yep.
Was one of the things that oak tree, my counselor that you mentioned at the beginning, it has been impressing upon me for the last few years, is that joy is medicine. So find what brings you real joy, like makes your heart sing. It's medicine, and that helps healing on every other level too, right? So, because we can get so serious and so down about, all the very real challenges and all the isms and all the otherings and all these terrible, terrible things. And if we hold like a space of joy in our hearts, then we can address these things from a place that brings change more fully and sustainably than when we come at it with our frustration and our anger and resentment, even though all of those feelings have a place and are utterly understandable. But the container is joy. That's our birthright. So I say and have seen and entice you to believe and go experience that nature is a wonderful gateway to come to that place, to come to feel that. And yeah, it's not just me. I've just seen it with so many people. And I didn't know that would happen when I was looking for herbs to help me with periodontal problems, in my late teens. I had no idea that all this wonderfulness would open up. And I know you said you'd link for me, which I appreciated, my website. Yeah. And I want to just add that, the best way to stay in touch with what I'm offering is through my newsletter, which is on the website, and also to say thank you for having me on your podcast. And also to say that I am excited about a new online course that I will be doing that starts spring equinox through the Shift Network. And I encourage people to check it out. I don't have information up about it yet, but I will very soon.
If we follow the newsletter, we won't miss it.
That's right. Yeah, and then of course I'm on all the usual social media stuff.
I highly recommend tracking down some of your other podcasts as well. Hopefully we didn't overlap too much, but Robin Rose, thank you sharing your story, for sharing your wisdom.
Mm.
And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to cross paths with you again.
Ditto, and I appreciate what you're doing. Yeah, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, great to meet you, and green blessings, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.